And here's the thing, here's the problem about controversies. It's not about a human looking at your activities, but it's about collecting the level of data so that you can make predictions and understand common behaviors and historic behaviors to allow your user permissions and friction to be less.
At this point in time, as it stands, at least in my memory, going through all the vendors that I know of, even the granddaddies of cybersecurity, none of them are ready for this.
I would say that nobody is ready for this. I think creativity, given enough context window, given that if AI can solve this long horizon problem, I think creativity is not anything at which AI can't do better than us.
If you're a cybersecurity leader or a CISO trying to figure out what your AI security plan is going to be for 2025, this is the episode. In this episode, Caleb and I spoke about the changes that we're seeing in the next few months that are going to be so enormous that we're going to have conversations about agentic AI on two levels. One is the human to agent level and then the agent to agent level. Yes, we're not far from it. We talk a lot about what kind of security, the top 3 priorities you should think about from an AI security plan that you would have included in your security program potentially. And what does it mean in terms of the announcements that are coming out from some of the major AI providers out there on what some of the capabilities are going to be in the next coming few months. And let's just say you might have to change this plan in the next few months. But something I'm excited about is identity is going to make a comeback. All that and a lot more in this episode of AI Cybersecurity Podcast. If you know someone who's trying to figure out what would their AI security plan look like for 2025, definitely share this episode with them. By the way, if you're here for a second or third time listening or watching AI Cybersecurity Podcast, you can definitely support us for free by hitting the subscribe, follow button on whichever platform you're listening or watching this on. I hope you enjoy this episode and I'll talk to you soon. Peace. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to 2025 episode. About Caleb. Hey, man. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So today's episode is going to be about CISOs. It's 2025. What's your AI security game plan? And I think maybe just to set some context, Caleb and I were talking about this earlier. Caleb, just set the scene for where we are today at the time of this recording from an AI perspective. And this is not just AI security, just AI in general, for what the model providers are up to, what the general news is.
One of the things I'd like to kick the year off with is about some of the most recent discussions happening in AI and where the excitement is. And so as I'm talking to people, I think a lot of model providers and individuals are, and as you've seen, if you pay attention to the AI news, a lot of people are getting very excited about the level of reasoning capability that is being created. What people started to figure out is there's a lot of ability to improve models in post-training. And this is starting to accelerate the level of capabilities of these models in incredible ways. It's interesting because if you think about, I would say third quarter of last year, maybe fourth quarter of last year, there was a slowdown of, okay, have we reached some of the limits of where models are in just terms of size, right? Like the amount of data at which you give it at some point, we're not seeing any leaps and bounds capability above the intelligence. And there's still like these limitations around its context window, its ability to really reason well. And then you just had this lull. I think Q4 of last year, we started now seeing agentic and agents starting to come back around. Providers like Anthropic and others obviously posted these very sort of rudimentary videos of AI using mouse and keyboard to click on windows. It was rough, right? If you used the project and played with it, it was pretty rough in its setup. And then now what we're starting to hear coming into January is, hey, by the way, we figured out reasoning has made leaps and bounds capability, agents and capability around using an actual screen and a laptop has made tremendous improvements within the past few months. And we're seeing very real jumps in capabilities now. And in fact, I think the word on the street is by third quarter of this year latest, you're going to see these things being able to do fully capable, handed a laptop, quote unquote, and it become a junior, whatever role you want it to be inside your company. I know through direct representation of certain AI companies that they have already done this and they already have AI roaming around inside their companies, sending Slacks, getting pointers to documentation, asking for permissions from IT and security to accomplish tasks, that this is in an autonomous fashion already working quite well. So if we start seeing that coming out this year, third quarter or fourth quarter, they're saying that the way we think of AI and our interface is going to change quite a bit. Now we've got people coding up APIs, tools, other sorts of things versus just straight up giving it a laptop and letting it go. This is a very different ballgame, which means it becomes way easier to interface and manage it and way easier to replace jobs with. Because if I can spawn up 500 virtual instances of Windows or OS X or whatever operating system you so choose, and then now it's using the screen, mouse, and keyboard to accomplish its tasks in a very legitimate way, that changes both how I think we think of AI and its adoption, its capabilities, and its security around how we think about that.
A laptop is a good one because I think most of the people that I've been talking to who have either started new jobs, a lot of them are getting Windows laptops with the AI capability inbuilt, or HP providers, or whatever the providers are these days.
Yeah,
Hey,
Copilot.
use AI for
Copilot.
Yeah, 100, yeah, that's right. So they have Copilot inbuilt. They're almost training people to be. It's the same thing as the fingerprint on your Apple MacBook. You just press the button and it just knows who you are. It's the same
Yeah.
thing you call Siri or Alexa or whatever. So doesn't that mean the way we have been preparing for AI is a bit, let's just say, old school by the time we actually talk about this? Like we're almost like, so what are some of the challenges we should be looking at then in the way it's going to present itself? Because it's no longer, or at least it doesn't sound like it's just me doing third-party management for what ChatGPT and Claude, if my data is secure or not. It sounds like it's a lot more than that in the presentation there.
Yeah, obviously it doesn't get rid of the same challenges that we have, because it's about AI infiltrating every facet of our lives, right? Which obviously software still needs to be built. Systems still need to run. All of these things are still going to happen, and you're still going to have to work with AI in that similar manner, where you're going to pragmatically, in some sense, or AI itself pragmatically will interface and create code, build things. So you're still going to need AI pipelines are still going to mature. AI inside of software is still going to mature. All of these aspects are still going to go down sort of these paths. But the way at which we have started to think about it in its adoption can change very drastically. Because if we think about it not giving it a laptop, then we're on that path of I need to build some sort of pipeline or workflow which AI is used in order to, let's say, deal with customer support issues or deal with production tickets in some way. I got to build a pipeline. I've got to code it. Coders are clearly using AI to help them create this code to go do this. But if it is as simple as here's a laptop, here's ServiceNow or Jira, your job is to process these tickets and get to the conclusion enough at which you can close the tickets in a satisfactory way. And the way you're going to determine whether you're successful on that is going to be based off of a reward factor of us saying, yes, this is done correctly. And then you're just given a laptop and that's it, a screen. And you're going to get a login credential like any other employee. And then this AI is now going to open up ServiceNow or Jira, process tickets, and communicate with employees like it is any other employee. I need permissions for this. I need documentation for that. I need to get access to this. I need to chase down Ashish in order to determine whether I can close this ticket down. Now, the adoption rate of companies in general using it is going to be so much faster because that's what we do today, which means literally, if this gets released and it does do the level of job that we're talking about, within 60 to 90 days, you're going to have 500 of these things running around your company because I can just spin up virtual instances and have this thing in there, and then it's going to just start doing its job. That is pretty crazy to think about versus what I think prior to this it being, which is there's a lot of changing of process, of infrastructure, of regulations, of all of these things happening in order to implement AI. If that actually is true, I can hand it a screen and a laptop and it uses it. All I can do is give it the right role and login credentials. And within 2 hours, this thing is now working. Like that is a whole different beast, man.
The reason I smile is because I feel like 2024 has been a lot more about what can the cloud provider give to the customers, a whatever is Bedrock, your private version of OpenAI, all of these different services that were being built so that the organization be capable with AI. Sounds like this is maybe that still remains there because we would not suddenly stop using a banking app. We'll still use a banking app. It's just that the background of it is a lot more efficient and faster. I feel like I'm coming to epiphany here that we probably have two sets of problems that we're dealing with. One with the existing application that we have and how they became AI capable. And the second one, to your point, is the agentic AI, which is AI talking to AI, I want to say. Suddenly, is that the kind of potential that we're looking at with the kind of updates coming in then?
Yeah, if you think about agentic AI, I think there's two levels of communication, right? It's an interface thing.
Yep.
There's the AI that is going to use our existing interfaces and ways that humans interact with the world. That is what everyone is getting excited about in the buzz, which is AI is really accessing the interfaces that we use today. Does it get to the point where it is exactly that? I launch a virtual instance, it uses a browser, it uses its permissions, and it just does what it needs to do. That's like the I can replace an employee instantaneously capability. No change in my processes, no change in my technology stack. Everything is the same as it is today. The only thing it replaces is that human body. Then I think there's a second level of agentic, and that is the agentic of system to system agentic, right? Where, okay, as opposed to a system API with code that is very rigid and structurally being coded and built, talking to another system or a service that's also rigid in its code, it's now you have two agents that are then talking to each other, or an agent using existing systems and services. And that is its user experience is at a protocol level, at a system level, not at that user. And so the agents, being defined overall is just, hey, can I be autonomous? Can I create my next tasks? That can be applied at the user experience level of a normal employee, or at the system level, replacing a system component or service.
For CISOs kind of building their game plan for AI security in 2025, what are some of the challenges that they should be looking at on both sides of it?
I think one thing is being pretty clear, which is we have enough reasoning capability and logic in AIs as it exists today in its technology for it to be able to make some pretty smart decisions to create actions. That is all happening. Everybody and their brother is focused on building this type of system. However, then it comes to place, which is, okay, as someone who is a CISO, what does that mean for me? Because the problem with AI is it's difficult to plan for, right? Like we think we have a handle on it, on the fact that you're like, hey, in order to do this, it's entirely new systems, new processes, new things. So therefore, okay, I have time. Right? My company is not going to adapt to AI in the next 3 months. It's going to take a year plus, even for us to get our infrastructure in place, the processes, the way to use it. All that's going to take a lot of time. So I've got some time to prepare. If what people are saying is true, where it is handed a laptop and it's going to start working and it's happening that fast, which, by the way, we didn't think it would happen that fast, because Anthropic's demo, as cool it is, was, okay, this thing is at baby crawling stage, right? Okay, we got at least a year or two before this thing can be real. That seems to be not true, which means that this thing can change in a month, in 60 days. What does the CISO do if I have 500 now autonomous AI agents using a laptop? This becomes a really critical fire to try to figure out. I don't like that, because you'd have no time to plan and it would happen faster than you think. But what I do like about it is I think that the first thing that you're going to do is it's about permissions. Everything is about least privilege. This is about the things that, as a security team, we should be focused on anyways, which is, how do we think about least privilege? How do we think about blast radius? How do we think about autonomous capabilities and what it can do versus what it actually does? How do we think about user monitoring and behavior? All of these things, I think, are going to spike in importance and criticality if this comes to be true, right? Either both on system to system autonomy, or even user to company resource autonomy, those things are going to spike. I need to know what permissions is this AI agent going to have. I need to know what capabilities and actions it can take. And I need to be able to monitor that behavior continuously in real time and respond to it. And those are very difficult things in companies today to do.
And maybe there's another layer to this as well. The data part we spoke about in the last episode, where a lot of people were preparing for this by doing data security, building that capability, even what kind of access should be allowed for a data. There's another layer of permission there as well, whether you let the agentic AI just go wild west in your entire environment, or like I'm just thinking of pharmaceutical companies and others who are probably a lot more, or even stock market for that matter as well, anything publicly listed. They're all very sensitive about the data. Anything leaking, even a little tiny bit of information, could mean potential or catastrophic damage for them from a reputation perspective. So I think to add to what you're saying as well, the autonomous capability is a layer that you're preparing for with the mindset that you have the strong foundation for the data elements for permission, the user elements for permission across most organizations. Does that mean IAM is getting a comeback?
IAM has been, some sense to your point, making this comeback.
Yeah.
But I think if what they say happens, IAM becomes a fire comeback where, oh, now if this gets released, people are like, oh, I can actually replace interns with 30, 40 virtual machines and AI on it who are going to take the roles of a junior marketing intern, a junior sales intern, a junior engineering intern, whatever these happen to be. Like, your executive team is going to want to do that right away. And they're going to push and they're going to say, I heard from Anthropic and OpenAI that you can just use a laptop and it will do all this work. What's preventing us from just adopting that now? Because if we don't adopt that now, like everyone else is already in the process of adopting it, we're going to fall behind. And so this creates a fire, which it's already a fire, Ashish, right? I think every security team knows, but it is a continuous, long, drawn out process that is hugely burdened and difficult to. It's like trying to get a whole bunch of headphones with tangled cords. How do I untangle? That's what IAM is in an enterprise. And so if your executive team is like, hey, we should onboard at least 50 to 100 of these things. You're like, are you kidding me? And then you've got to figure out how to create the right roles. And the other problem is, unlike people who have accountability, I can hire a junior marketing intern, and my junior marketing intern might have access to edit the, Instagram post of my company. And that junior marketing intern knows that if they screw that up, they're in trouble and they get fired for that.
Yep.
So they're really careful about making sure they get the right permissions before editing that and doing something, even though they may have the permission to do, because that's part of their job. But an AI agent does not have that level of threat. There is no accountability for an AI agent. Therefore, how does it know, even though it has the right and privilege to write to Instagram, does it know what it should be posting versus what it shouldn't? Because all it takes is a slight veering of its autonomous production of what it should write there, and it can write the wrong thing. And that could be a very big impact to the company. And firing it doesn't exist.
It's funny because one of the reasons why I was laughing harder was because I started my career in IAM, and I always used to think of this field as, why do people spend years in IAM? I didn't even get it. And like now, the more time I spend in technology, I realize how important IAM is. But in the pieces you called out, one thing that stood out for me from a IAM permission about being able to find someone responsible and being able to take a potential action for it's a human mistake. Or we won't have that shield to sign up. Hey, it's only human. We do make mistakes. That shield is going to go away at some point. And I imagine, what does that mean from the pressure that the security team would have in 2025 to figure this out while having permissions laid out? Because traditionally, in the entire time that people have spent in IAM, there's usually two kinds of problems. One is my customer, can they log into my bank account or not, or can they check their balance? Perfect. That's been looked after, taken care of. That's where the chatbots and other people have been helping. The internal employee is usually where it becomes, like to your point about the cable of a headphone.
Spaghetti.
That's a spaghetti. You're trying to figure out, does she really need this anymore? He started off as an IAM person, but now he became a CISO, did all of that. Now he's talking about AI. What does he still need IAM access? And I think because over time, I think that, as I call it, about the life cycle, the IAM piece becomes even more interesting because now the identity people are being asked that, hey, for an enterprise or an internal employee, it's not just enough that you do a single sign-on, or because there's no single sign-on for agentic AI. We're calling what mutual TLS between agentic AI, and maybe that could be one reason. But I think we haven't really gone down to the nuance of, hey, if they're communicating over APIs, are they communicating with just like SAML would be a thing, which is an industry standard that we've been talking about for a long time. I think that complexity, we haven't even started unpacking that yet, or unless you've been hearing something else.
No, to your point, there's what I'm talking about in this instance where it is a literal virtual machine at which an agent interfaces with the screen. Yeah. And then there is the system permissions and what it can access on an underlying pragmatic perspective. And both are problems. We were thinking more on the pragmatic underlying problem and not about the user, interface to a virtual machine problem. And what's scary, again, to my point, is like the pragmatic problem, we have time. Oh, this is processes, this is new technology. It's going to take time for people to adopt this. So my competitors in the market are probably suffering the same thing that I am in figuring out how to fit this together and make it work. Yeah. But if it does that hop to I am just a virtual machine, I will use Chrome and log in and browse around. And my login name is Marketing Intern 1 and Marketing Intern 2 and Marketing Intern 3. And it just goes and does jobs. The speed of adoption becomes a race in a really fast way, because my competitors, who may not be as security conscious as I am, they may now be able to save costs on 50 people. And they're going to go launch 50 of these things to get their job done faster. And if we don't, because security is blocking us, that is a pain that can be felt in a 6-month time frame, in a 3-month time frame versus years time frame, which I think we were having previous to this. Yeah. So that's pressure.
I mean, 100%. I think, and the additional pressure of identity people, I don't even know if identity people are aware this is coming their way, because they're probably thinking this on the engineering side. Once the security architect figures out what's going to be, but to your point, because identity people usually, when they provision a user, they look at the fact that, oh, Ashish and Caleb have been created as regular user, admin user, end of story, SAML everywhere. My life is like that sorted. Next time I speak to Caleb or Ashish would be when they change their roles. Never again. The conversation of system to system conversation, or even human to an AI system. What is the responsibility there? I'm sure that the top layer of human to system is probably being investigated and what that could be like, API tokens or whatever. The bottom layer, which is the system to system one, even I could only think of mutual TLS. I'm like, I don't know what else is out there to be explored. As I paint that picture in, what is something that people could be doing? And because this is us talking about plans for 2025, what CISOs could be doing. It definitely sounds like there's two possibilities here. One is obviously the integration that it would have with our existing systems, our laptops, it being able to, me as a user, just going in and say, this is how you implement a new security product, and just does it every single time across the entire fleet of computers, virtual machines you have. What am I doing now? Like just sitting and waiting for it to verify. But what's a plan here that we can recommend to people? Obviously, we call out the identity part. We call out the agentic AI kind of taking over. In terms of the short term, because I don't think there's a possibility to have a long-term plan for AI in a security program at this point in time, outside of all the other priority people already deal with. From an AI component perspective, is there like a top 2 or top 3? And I put that with an asterisk because depending on how much adoption has already happened in AI in the organization, the answer may be different. Is there like a top 3 thing that comes to mind where people can put in their to-do list for, hey, I should probably at least look at these 3 things, depending on whatever the future comes out?
Yeah, obviously, in this scenario that we're talking about, least privilege is number 1, which is, what is your least privilege IAM strategy? Have you even started on it? Have you even planned it? Have you even created a strategy around this? And have you kicked it off? What is the technology stack you need? What is the right way to go and do this? Because you're going to need to have a great handle on what are your roles in your organization? How fluid are these roles? What's the process of requesting new permissions? What's the process of expiring existing permissions? Which I would say, I call this second, but it really maybe is just a subpart of number 1. But how do you monitor that? How do you monitor today? And this can be very controversial, But as a security person, I believe it's hugely important. How do you monitor your users' activities? How do you know what they're doing, when they're doing, how they're doing it? Why is this important? This is important because if I can get that data, and here's the thing, here's the problem about controversies. It's not about a human looking at your activities, but it's about collecting the level of data so that you can make predictions and understand common behaviors and historic behaviors to allow your user permissions and friction to be less. Because I need to know that Ashish always uses Salesforce, and he is a common user of Salesforce in these kinds of activities. He has permission to Okta, but rarely uses it. And so these are the kinds of things that you need to have monitoring over so that as we move into agentic kinds of worlds, that you can identify, okay, these are the permissions for the things you need, and that you are doing the things that at which I expect you to do. And if you deviate out of that, is very problematic. And especially in agentic world where you have there's no recourse or accountability. You need to identify bad behavior instantaneously. And it's not necessarily about an AI being nefarious. It's about an AI just making mistakes.
One thing I keep going back to is that with all the monitoring, being able to know what an incident response plan would be, it's like deja vu for me, because when we started talking about cloud, when I started talking about it at least 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of conversation about, hey, how do we make sure the cloud resource is secure? This is happening, that is happening. And in all of that, we forgot about what do we do when an actual incident happens.
Yeah.
And in only the last couple of years that we started talking about that, there's runtime conversation, there's all of that. And if AI is accelerating much faster, which clearly it's happening way faster than cloud was, I would like at least people to start considering, with all the data they have collected, do they currently have a capability, to detect there is something wrong in any part of the environment? How quickly can they get to it? And if they were, depending on the data, can they quickly identify what kind of data was impacted by it? Because this is all the data fuel that's fueling this thing. Because at the end of the day, as security people, we are trying to enable the business, but at the same time, we want them to be resilient to the fact that if something does happen, we have a plan to maybe not reverse it, and probably impossible to reverse this at this point in time, but at least be able to triage it and get to a point where you feel, okay, we can calm down about this now, and we don't have to be like on tenterhooks.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. And even going one step further, not only how do you respond to an autonomous agent, let's say, deleting a bunch of tickets that shouldn't have deleted when it wasn't done yet, but it thought it was done, right?
Imagine someone deletes a backlog. They're complete, oh, you know what? I've gone through this. Not a priority. Why? It just deletes the entire backlog.
And it deletes the whole backlog. Like, which, by the way, is like a really feasible and plausible situation, right? To your point, how do you detect that something wrong has happened? And minus someone going, hey, what happened to all of the Jira's backlog? Yeah, but how do you respond to it? That's a great question.
Or even the change of, I'm going to stop after the rabbit hole, but I think it's all the detections that we've been writing, all the amazing work engineering has been doing. A lot of times there's a lot of band-aid fixes everywhere. And it's both on engineering side, security side. Your agentic AI just reviews the code and go, you know what, that's bad, and just changes it. But it may not be the best solution in an organization which has had these. I'm not sure if you've worked in those organizations, but I've been in certain organizations where there are parts of the system no one talks about, no one touches, no one even wants to know what happens when you open that door. If an agentic AI is like, oh, actually, I'm going to go and try and solve the hardest problem on this thing, which is a code base that doesn't exist anymore, a software that is not supported anymore, but it is quite crucial for that thing to be running for you to exist as a business. So you can go from a $1 million or multi-billion-dollar business to zero in a matter of minutes.
Yes. And it actually goes back to pointing even to a bigger problem when you think through this is, okay, now what it's doing is, okay, I can solve this problem, Ashish, and the way I'm going to solve it is human in the loop. It's going to submit tickets or it's going to submit PRs. And I clearly have engineers who are going to review that and approve it before allowing it to happen. But to your point, the AI is going to go solve this problem at which every engineer knows, hey, we don't want to touch this, but it's going to keep submitting tickets. And so then how do you retrain? Now you got to go back to that AI agent and somehow put in an exemption and say, hey, do this, but not for this and this and that. And now you get into this sort of like feedback loop that becomes a pain in the butt to figure out how to get this thing adjusted to where it doesn't do that anymore. But to your point, these kinds of things, these little annoying things that we're talking about, like that, I think is going to be 95% of the problem. Is you're going to run this thing and it's going to do exactly what you said. All these stupid little, okay, don't look at that. Hey, don't comment on this.
Next thing, we are back to the wall of red again, where just basically a wall of red for all these Jira tickets are being created for all the band-aid fixes. Someone needs to go back and fix it. And someone executives go, hey, how about we let the agentic AI do the future problems while you guys focus on the shit that you left behind? Just to add another layer to this, and in all of these conversations, and I think I'm gonna, how with the explosion of SaaS providers, it became, corporate security became like quite important from that perspective, because most organizations these days have over 300 plus SaaS being used. And traditionally, a lot of people have focused on the enterprise side, more on the enterprise security side, where, hey, our applications, because that's what makes us money. SaaS is just a corporate tool, blah, blah, blah. Do you see this agentic AI piece on the corporate side or the enterprise side? Or is it going to be, because I'm thinking of a world where if there are multiple agents, there's like an agent warlord sitting on top, and then there's two subsection or two tree branches coming out of it, one for enterprise, one for corporate. And then they have these little child agent babies floating around. Have you got some thoughts on that?
I think that's what sort of, in my mind, was that you could say is the difference between the two of user experience versus pragmatic API. The enterprise side is pragmatic API, right? As a SaaS service, I want to provide API AI level capabilities and features. And that's going to be pragmatic in its nature. It's going to be built into the software and the engine that I use. But then on the corporate side, what I really want to do is reduce my cost in employees, tedious and dumb tasks. Therefore, the corporate side becomes a replacement of an employee and or augmenting of that employee. I can just use this laptop type scenario.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think I don't disagree with it. I definitely find a lot of that functionality is because that's classified as an operational cost usually as well. It's not technically classified as like it's generating revenue. Unfortunately, security has always been trying to be the revenue generator. So I don't know what happens to us in this world of agentic AI, deleting all the backlogs. Hopefully, we become more important, or we start giving IAM more importance. Actually, I don't even know if the providers themselves are ready for it, because there's one thing us identifying the problem, but another that do we even have the tools in the industry? And that's probably like the final point as well. As much as we've spoken about the tactical plans for people, at this point in time as it stands, at least in my memory, going through all the vendors that I know of, even the granddaddies of cybersecurity, none of them are ready for this.
I would say that nobody is ready for this.
It's a great way to end the episode, Caleb. Like, hey guys, you're sorry to say this, but you're all screwed after this. Let's talk in 6 months' time and see who has a job.
It's funny because I was talking with my wife yesterday about this, and I was talking about the job losses thing is it's a real problem, right? And look, listen, there's so much nuance and complexity in this. There's no simple answer to it, obviously. But then she was like, think about all the people that don't have your level of knowledge about what is coming versus you do, right? And so she was like, isn't your access and capability of knowing that this is coming and the capabilities of this give you an advantage in knowledge of what jobs do or don't? And I was like, I don't really think so. I don't like, I think like everyone that I've talked to, even at that level of access, are still figuring out, hey, what does this really mean in its sense of what's going on? For example, the World Economic Forum released their 2025 future jobs report, where the quote unquote smartest people in the world are going to put this in here. And then you look at the list and you're like, it's making a lot of assumptions, but logically it makes sense, right? There, I think the number one thing which was really interesting to me was who's going to lose their jobs first. The very bottom is U.S. postal workers, and I was like, in AI, is that the thing that really is going to lose? But they themselves are taking educated guesses as to what jobs will be more relevant versus what jobs will not be more relevant. But what everyone, even to the people who are at the edge of this, are still trying to figure out, like when you talk to them and they have kids, What is your kid going to do that you think is going to be sustainable? And the answers really are don't quite know right now.
Yeah.
Maybe something with your hands is the is
Yeah,
the
probably.
question.
Yes. I was also curious about that future of jobs report because I made a post about my LinkedIn a few days ago. The top three things, which was really interesting, was AI, cybersecurity, technology literacy. The number four was interesting for me, which is creative thinking. And one would think that the reason I thought of that is because it goes back to your point, where at the end of the day, if we're all writing prompts and trying to ask this agent AI to do things, being able to be more creative around, hey, by the way, what happens in movies or sci-fi movies, someone still need to be able to be creative and not just sit on their butt and just swipe through Instagram, I guess.
I actually think that does not become true. Like it's already not true in the sense that AI can be a lot more creative than either one of us. How do I come up with company names? How do I come up with product strategy? Like you'd go with AI. Actually, I challenged my wife, who's a chef, yesterday. Yeah. She was like, but AI can't do things like come up with good new recipes. And I was like, have you tried? And she goes, no. And I was like, let's try it. And she's, I don't believe it can. And so we went down a task and it came up within 15 minutes. It came up with something after a bunch of iterations where she was like, I actually need to go home and cook this and see what this, because this looks pretty good.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. Like I think creativity, given enough context window, given that if AI can solve this long horizon problem, I think creativity is not anything at which AI can't do better than us. And so, and we won't be chatting with it, right? We'll be talking to it. Like with video and I just don't think it's going to be
like I'm imagining a Blade Runner future where there's the hologram of an AI agent, your personal AI agent walking around with you and all of that. That you come home, welcomes the entire family and gives an update for what's in the news or whatever. Like instead of you switching on television, it just gives you a TLDR summary of the day. So you can just go about and do your things. The World Economic Forum thing is an interesting one because it also made me think of because of the wealth gap that does exist in the world already. And to what your wife said about the level of access of information, I want to be optimistic for it's going to be people with the access and all of that. But since we want to close this on a positive note, that we have given people plans, we can't solve all the world problems, but at least we can show them the way forward. So hopefully people who got to see and watch the episode, or people who got to watch and listen to the episode, maybe got some insights on it. And maybe if you have some thoughts, definitely drop it as a comment or share it with us on what you think about the future of building an AI security plan for yourself and your organization, and perhaps your personal team as well that you may have. How are you making them ready for AI security? Any final thoughts, Caleb?
No, that sounds good. I like the positive vibe on that, which, by the way, I could talk a lot more about some positive things too. But
that's a part two, guys. Come back tomorrow or come back in a fortnight for the next episode. It's going to be a positive one. We definitely want to talk about that as well. But thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to that episode of AI Cybersecurity Podcast. If you are wondering why aren't we covering all topics, because maybe the field is evolving too quickly, so we may not even know some of the topics we have not covered. If you know of a topic that we should cover on AI Cybersecurity Podcast or someone we should bring as a guest, definitely email us on info@cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. Which reminds me, we have a sister podcast called Cloud Security Podcast where we talk about everything cloud security with leaders. Similar to the AI cybersecurity conversation, we focus on cloud security specifically in the public cloud environment at cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. If you find helpful, definitely check out www.cloudsecuritypodcast.tv. Otherwise, I will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of AI Cybersecurity Podcast. Have a great one. Peace.